In her ratings. High all the time.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Yes. Yeah. So thank you, Kelly Dwyer, a lot for that wonderful song. I actually commissioned it from you 6 months ago, and I'm just using it now. Great job. That was so much fun, and I'm very nervous, so I needed something very nice to start my show off. Also, we're going to be hearing the sounds of New York today, almost as if we are in a basement theater. As per usual, you hear all the sirens, you hear all the noise outside. I like hearing all of the noise outside. I also really just like being on my balcony, honestly. I don't know. I've been out here for most of the pandemic. I've been outside more than I have my entire life, actually. The first few months I got very sunburned, and I wasn't planning on it because I hadn't ever been outside as much. Anyway, my parents shouldn't have been allowed to choose my name at all. I know that Genevieve sounds gorgeous, and it's what Genny is short for. In fact, the only reason why Genny stuck is because my preschool teachers found it really hard to pronounce. But Genevieve itself was a total fluke. It's from a song from their favorite musical because they're both nerds. They were obsessed with the 1960s musical Camelot. And in it, Guinevere starts the song, The Simple Joys of Maidenhood, and calls out to Saint Genevieve. That's right, if they hadn't been obsessed with that old-timey musical, I wouldn't have this name. They thought that Genevieve sounded like anything from a cheerleader to a lawyer, so that was Plan B. That was Plan B. Yeah, Plan A was that I didn't pop out a girl at all. They were very much planning on a boy baby. Everyone decided right off the bat, before I even came out, that I was a boy. My dad had stated that he was so manly that there was no way I could be anything but a boy, because that's how science works. They didn't get an ultrasound done or anything. I was just going to get squeezed out as a boy because Bob Yosco said it was so. Blue onesies, blue baby toys, the works. I remember having not one but two of these big, or at least big for a kid, Precious Moments soft body dolls. They had these round sad-eye faces that you see on every Precious Moments figurine, brown hair and eyes, and were in full army camo uniforms because that is what I was supposed to be. And they were going to call me Rocco. Hell, they were already calling me Rocco while I was in utero. And this, by the way, had nothing to do with Rocco's Modern Life. They weren't like super fans of the show. That show only premiered on September 18th of 1993. I was born January 15th, 1992, like a full year and some change before that. So just New Jersey white people picking a New Jersey white person name. I don't know how else to explain it to y'all. January 15th of 1992. A Wednesday. It's noon. So I immediately decide to leave my mother because it's lunchtime and I have and always will be a food-driven animal, so it is my time to arrive. The jury's still out on what I was trying to do with this exact exit here. We know that it was clearly theatrical, possibly some sort of a hand-on-head starlet pose or maybe like a jazz hand, but either way, I absolutely came out hand first. So while my mother is screaming in agony from having to push out the width of my head and shoulder at the same time, the doctor looks down at this horror movie scene, just a bloody baby hand reaching out from inside of a screaming woman, and he, the most sexist prophet, just immediately says, "Oh, it's a girl, it wants something." Should he have said that? Absolutely not. Was he wrong in any way? No, he was not. As soon as I'm done destroying my mother, little Genevieve is put in one of those things they cook babies in to get rid of possible jaundice. I don't know what the science is. I don't know what they are, but they're the anti-jaundice lights or whatever. And I'm yelling because my dramatic entrance was ruined. And my dad just starts saying, "Oh, Genevieve, Genevieve." I shut up for a little while. We all know me. Was not very long. January 15th of 1992. A Wednesday. There's a poem that's been around since 1838. It's part fortune-telling song, part nursery rhyme. The first 3 lines are, Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe, we don't need to go further than that. Well, in the very early versions of the rhyme, it was actually a babies born on Friday that were full of woe, but they changed that once weekends were incorporated into the work week. But there was a lot of like superstition surrounding bad luck on Fridays. I can assure you the adaptation we all know and love now is most accurate because I am Wednesday's child and this bitch is full of woe. I was a save the marriage baby. My parents had been married for 2 years and it was not working. So they decided to have a kid. My mom wanted someone nice in the house to hang out with, and my dad made very bad decisions all the time. So this is what happened. Bob, my father, was equal parts dumb and angry just all the time. When I was going to be Rocco, everything was cool, or as cool as they could be when you're equal parts dumb and angry. When I jazz handed my way out into the world, I was a little girl with a princessy name. I was absolutely adorable, by the way. I was the cutest baby, full offense to all other babies. Well, he didn't like anything that took attention away from him. And that's why he started not like my mom anymore, because she took attention away from him by being way better looking and also 10 years younger than him. If I had been a boy, I would have been an extension of him. As a girl, and a cute one at that, I was an extension of my mother. Therefore, I was to be stopped. Even though I have and always will look exactly like him. Even when I was really little, like really, really little, relatives, friends, my parents would actually call me Bob in drag, which meant that I learned what drag was very, very early. And that explains a lot about me already. Show's over. We're done. I can't even remember a time, really, when my parents were, like, together. They separated when I was 2 years old and officially divorced when I was 7. The holdup was due to how much of a terrible person Bob is. He'd do things like buy a pet bunny for his mother, my Nana Dorothy, but then tell me it was actually a present for me that he was keeping at my Nana Dorothy's place, so I'd want to come visit. And then my Nana Dorothy would yell at me when I would tell her about it, because clearly I was a stupid idiot. This was a present for her. What the fuck was I talking about? He was a stay-at-home dad, but he didn't do dad stuff during that time. He bought a Labrador Retriever puppy, never trained it, and as it grew older, it ate all of my Barbies. Just full feet sticking out of her mouth. Her name was Ebony, and she was the dumbest dog I've ever met. Still loved her to death, even though she hated my Barbies and wanted to eat them all. Bob would be on the internet day in and day out while my mom was out at work all day. He was a pioneer of the 90s. She was working at an oil processing plant that they had actually both worked at before he went full lazy jackass. They didn't meet at the job. He actually had been a childhood best friend of my mom's older brother. I will say right now that if there's a 10-year age difference between two people who meet as adults, that's usually fine. But when you're 16, you meet someone who's 6, and then you watch them grow up and start dating them when they're in their 20s, that's an icky adult man. He had one great accomplishment, though, other than helping create everything you're seeing in front of you, that is. Bob was one of the world's first catfish. See, one day while he was home watching me, he was on internet chat rooms pretending to be a lesbian named Diane. He'd use a photo of my mom, because she was hot, and use photos of Ebony saying that her name was actually Genevieve. So whenever he'd slip up and say something about me, it'd seem like he was talking about the dog. And I'm still fully 100% convinced this is why he got the dog in the first place. He'd form relationships with online lesbians and get them to send nudes to Diane. And also Diane had cancer, so they needed to feel really bad for her. And that was also a really good excuse to not send nudes back. Ever being the world's first anything means that you're going to suck at it. This absolute idiot of a man would give out a real home address to these poor women who started sending bouquets and get well soon cards to Diane that my mom would immediately find because she was the only one who did jack shit around the house. She thought maybe that Bob was having an affair with someone named Diane, or that someone had the wrong address, or something. I don't know. One day, my mom comes home from work, and our house is surrounded by cop cars. She has no idea what's happening, but she sees a social worker taking baby Genevieve out the door. She had literally arrived just in time to make sure I didn't get put in foster care. She, in a state of shock, kept asking all of the neighbors if they were okay. Now, we don't exactly know what Bob was planning on doing, only that he had written suicidal goodbye notes to all of his online girlfriends. And since they all had our address, they all called the police. The police, upon entry, found 2-year-old Jenny, our dog Ebony with doll legs sticking out of her mouth, and Bob with a lot of loaded and unlocked guns. My mom did not stop anyone from taking Bob away. Bob gets put in a mental institution. The staff, at the day staff and the night staff are, well, day and night, I guess. The day staff are all under the impression that it's a total misunderstanding, that Bob would never do anything to hurt us. He's just sad and needs to come home. And the night staff would all tell my mom that this man is a violent sociopath and he needs to leave our home immediately, and she needs to divorce him immediately. He's released but not allowed home per my mother's instructions, for obvious reasons. My mom keeps trying to get him to sign divorce papers, but he won't. The most outlandish excuse this man actually tried to use was that he was in a helicopter in Australia over a waterfall, as you are, and the loose documents of the divorce papers just fell out the side, as if things couldn't ever be reprinted. During their 5-year separation, we find that Bob has purposefully saved images to our home computer, which he barely uses because he doesn't live there anymore, of him illegally marrying someone else. One of his online girlfriends he met while catfishing was bisexual. Also, she's like 18 years old, while he was around 44 at the time. He purposefully married her while still married to my mom, so it wouldn't be legally binding, and he could bounce at any time, which seems smart, but I must remind you that this man is very, very dumb. After my mom finds these photos, he brought her to us. He pretended that she was a cousin we had never met. Again, my mother had known him since she was a child, gave her a fake name, but kept forgetting to call her by the fake name. And the two of them tried to convince me to run off with them to Australia. I am never going to Australia in my entire life. I don't care if that's where they grow the Hemsworth brothers. I'm not going. After a while, Bob kind of sort of left us alone. My mom started leaving me with Nana Dorothy while she was at work because we were too poor to have a babysitter, and the family on my mom's side were a little too afraid to take care of me in case Bob would come back and act like a crazy person. My Nana's house was insane, way too massive for what they could afford, and on a really decent plot of land as well. There was a fairy tale amount of tiger lilies growing outside. Bob's 2 half-brothers lived there with her, John and Joe. John always had these cute German shepherds, and he grew tomatoes outside, and Joe always wanted me to eat coffee-flavored ice cream and had a full koi and goldfish pond out in the yard. My pop-pop, I barely remember. He ran off with a nurse a few years into my existence. Frankly, I would have run away from my Nana too if given the opportunity, especially with a hot nurse. Nana was mean-spirited, spoiled, and rude. We lived in New Jersey. Please just picture an aging Snooki. That was her with the voice and the hair and tan. My very first word was me crankily yelling, "Mom, Mom," when my mom came to pick me up one time. It was taking too long to get me the fuck out of that house. I was not about it. It looked pretty, but everything on the inside was cancer. Eventually, my Nana kept trying to pressure my mom into taking Bob back. I'm sure she knew nothing about teenage stepmom / Bob's long-lost cousin. She probably only heard sob stories from Bob when he wanted something. My mom couldn't take it anymore, so she spent money we didn't have to put me in a daycare in an attempt to get me in a better situation. It wasn't worse by any means. It wound up being more of a lateral move. Rainbow World is what it was called. I generally don't remember a ton of my childhood at the preschool I went to. I don't remember a ton of my childhood in general, but I may or may not have been dealing with a lot of trauma, some of which we won't get into here because it's my show and I decide what I talk about. I do remember for vastly unknown reasons, the teachers at the preschool hated me, like actually hated me, didn't help with the trauma thing. I don't mean they were a little mean to me. There was this one teacher in particular, Miss Jen with a J, who despised me. I have no idea how tall she actually was, but she looked like a giant to me. I can't remember her face at all, but she had a lot of blonde hair, sometimes in a Rachel from Friends, sometimes in a Farrah Fawcett. She hated me for real. I don't know what I ever did to her aside from normal kid stuff, and I wasn't there past the age of 4. But we would have silent reading time, and during this reading time, you had to pay attention to when your name was being called, as they called us one by one to the snack time table. I looked up on more than one occasion to see the kids all staring directly at me in silence, and Miss Jen saying that she had been calling me for ages, and no one had gotten to eat, and it was my fault, because no one could come over and get me or say my name a little louder. And ages always turned out to be once before we decided to have everyone stare passive aggressively at you in silence until you felt the waves of discomfort wash over you. But sorry that I was really into my Peter Pan book, I guess. Parents would often tell my mom that they'd see me sitting outside the classroom in timeout when they dropped me off, and when they came to pick their kids up, I was in the same place, still not allowed to come back in. One time, Miss Jen told me at the very beginning of the day that my mom had called and said that I'd lied to her. So as punishment for lying to my mother, I had to sit against the wall during playtime and watch. And for like 3 days, that gave me some trust issues with my mom until I asked her about it. And turns out she literally never called them except to complain about how poorly they were treating me. I wasn't an angry child or anything. I was very clingy, and I was extremely sensitive and cried a lot, still do. But I wasn't like violent or anything. I actually did an incredibly cringy thing where sometimes when I thought I wasn't going to be heard, I'd get sad and pretend I was in a musical and start looking off into the distance and singing a ballad about how hard my life was. I'd even try and make it rhyme. I stopped immediately after I saw 2 girls doing the same thing, each singing their own ballad like 3 feet away from me after like 3 of us had gotten into a fight one time. The embarrassment of how it looked and the sounds of how bad it was just crashed over me like a tsunami. But I would have massive panic attacks when my mom brought up leaving the place. Turns out I have some separation anxiety. Rainbow World became my before and after school care when I started kindergarten. I would get dropped off at Rainbow World, and they'd bus us over to Orlando Pines, where our mascot was, you guessed it, a pirate. I don't know. I was surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, at Rainbow World, quite the flirt. Even after I was going to Orlando Pines and after that a different school entirely, I missed the boys at Rainbow World so much. I had 3 boyfriends throughout my time at Rainbow World. In fact, in the 2nd grade, I believe, I had written a poem about my former love life. I read it out loud at, I don't know what it was. It was some big brown room that may have been a library. I'm not really sure. And I had to stand on a podium, and I was reading to parents and children. A parents' night thing? I don't really know. Anyway, I'm very vain, and I found the poem, so we're going to read it together. Okay. 2nd grade. I know I'm very young, but I've still had quite a life. I've had a couple boyfriends. Someday I'll be a wife. First there was Kenny, and yes, our names rhyme. A bright and shiny penny I wouldn't trade for a dime. After there was Christopher, who was sweet as a rose, until one day he got jealous and bit me on the nose. Finally, Anthony, the one that got away. He gave me a teddy bear that I treasure to this day. So see, I've had some heartbreak. It's quite clear to see that someday my poor mommy will be quite worried for me. Let's dissect this a little bit, shall we? Okay, first of all, yes, Kenny, my first boyfriend. He literally chased me around saying, Jenny, Jenny, spend a penny. And I don't know what it means, but whatever line it was, it worked hard, and I was in love with him. God, I do love how I say I wouldn't trade him, and then I immediately talk about another boy. Oh, such a mood. All right. And yes, Christopher did bite me on the nose because that was the day that Anthony, the next boy in the poem, started preschool, and I was smitten from day one. So I wouldn't say that he had cause to bite me on the nose, but he had cause to be a little upset. Anthony did give me a bear the day I left Rainbow World for good. It was a black bear with a brown muzzle, a beanie body, but not a beanie baby, and it had a red ribbon around its neck with white hearts on it. One of the very few boyfriends in my entire life to give me a gift, which is very depressing to say out loud, much more depressing than when I wrote it for, whew, I felt like such a dweeb afterwards because the gift I'd given him were pencils with his name on it. He gave me a love bear, and I gave him pencils with his name on them. It would be mean to leave out that Kenny had gotten me a Barney book one time, which was also very on point because I loved Barney. I was obsessed with Barney. He wanted to give me a princess dress because even back then that was my aesthetic and it was strong. But his mom said no. I didn't have any boyfriends for years and years afterwards. I still liked boys a lot, so it wasn't for lack of trying. Boys just didn't like me, which was their loss. At my new school, what I lacked in torrid toddler affairs, I made up for in creative talent. Exhibit A being that lovely little poem from before. I excelled in my art classes. I even made a self-portrait once because of course I did. It was made out of all cut up construction paper and yarn for hair, and it won an award. I made a clay sculpture that fit in the palm of my hand. It was a green bowl with a bunch of fruit in it. At the time, I was a decent enough singer. At the end of second grade, my choir teacher had approached me after class and said that while advanced choir normally accepts 4th and 5th graders, she wanted me to join next year when I was a 3rd grader. And I told her that I couldn't because I'd be living in another state next year. Right before I started the 3rd grade, my mom and I moved to West Virginia. She had recently started college, and it turns out higher level education is cheaper in West Virginia than what it was for us living in New Jersey. Plus, we had some people there that told us that the city parts were like a total dupe for the parts we lived in New Jersey, and it wouldn't be a huge culture shock for us at all, and we'd love it. Either they lied to us, or they did not know what a city looked like. First thing we should have done when we got to West Virginia was pick a church. We should have. Neither my mom or myself were very religious at all, nor were we very proper ladies. Like, one of my first full sentences was, "Mommy, that's a big fucking bus." And when the South Park movie came out in 1999, I memorized the soundtrack, choreographed dances to the songs with my Barbies. I was particularly fond of Uncle Fucker and Kyle's Mom's a Bitch. So yeah, not church people for West Virginia. We also didn't want to be church people. But as it turns out, growing up, a lot of people get a lot of things based on who they knew in church, at least there. I didn't grow up anywhere else, and I've only lived one life that I remember, at least. I don't know. So here I am, new kid, single mother, pretty poor, whose family did not go to church. Boys still didn't like me at all, and I was a total outcast. Apparently, I had peaked back in New Jersey because also I was viewed as vastly untalented. I never thought I was like great on stage, but good enough to be like a character actor. Yeah. And yes, by then I knew I wanted to be an actor. I had my mom act out storybooks with me instead of read them to me, and we'd always go off script, and my plots were always better anyway. There was a TV show in 1998 called Jessie, starring Christina Applegate, that had an episode based on these two characters being hypnotized and thinking that they were Romeo and Juliet. And it stuck with me so hard that I immediately dug out my mom's old copy of Romeo and Juliet and memorized all of Juliet's balcony monologue for fun at age 6. So yeah, I wanted to be an actor. My poor mom was doomed from the start with that. 5th grade was a weird, foggy memory for me in a lot of ways, not just because I was thought to be good at math, but actually I only really knew how to use a calculator, and nobody really knew what to do with that information, especially me, because like I know how to push the buttons on here. That's it. There's a lot of weird explaining. That was also the year I learned about 9/11, even though it had happened a whole year before then. But no one had explained what had happened to me, so that was a weird shock. One of those weird things where like something bad happened a long time ago. I'm processing it now, and everyone else is. It was also the last time I looked like a child. I'm not saying I never looked young again. Hopefully some of you still think that I look young now at the ripe old age of 28. But the summer between 5th and 6th grade, my body exploded. puberty hit me like a truck. I grew almost immediately to a terrifying, at the time, 5'9". My figure went from Tina Belcher to Betty Boop, but I still had a Tina Belcher personality, so everyone was confused. And of course, everyone decided that since I had boobs, I must be using them to hypnotize men into wanting me. 6th grade, y'all. I, in my rumored slutty glory, joined the Children's Theater Company in town. The Children's Theater Company in town. There was zero competition, and I had wanted to be an actor for so long. Even though my mom and I didn't have a lot of money, she paid for me to be part of this Children's Theater Company, which was a terrible idea, but we didn't know that then. We should have, though, because the date I joined was September 3rd of 2003, also known as a fucking Wednesday. It was run by a terrible, miserable woman. She clearly, loudly wanted to be an actor herself, but fell into that trap of, you can teach acting. This, you should know, by the way, is bad advice. If you want to direct, write, produce, yeah, totally, go teach acting. If you want to be just an actor, teaching acting is just watching a bunch of performers younger than you with their whole lives ahead of them, filled with opportunities, taking parts that it would be weird for you to cast yourself in because you'd be acting opposite of a bunch of children. So don't do that. Since I didn't have a dad for her to flirt with, and I myself wasn't male, and my mom didn't have money to throw at any of the costumes or set pieces, I was always put in these really small, way back in the back row chorus, which was fine, except I was also treated really badly. I don't really know how else to put it, except for I was just treated really badly. She knew I was a good actor. The other parents even pointed it out to her that I was good after performances. She didn't like that because she liked to create performers. She liked to be the reason why people were talented. She didn't like you coming in with anything. Again, if I had known that, I would have just faked it and let her think that she was the inspiration for my entire acting career. And I really should have. I even just should have, after like the first performance, dumbed it way down and let her teach me. My life would have been so much better. But she didn't like me. And I was constantly in this limbo of given very small bit parts in a large show where I'm lauded for my acting abilities, but not allowed to have anything else or grow as a performer. And then she gets even more mad as the parents and even some of the other children say that I should be getting bigger parts, then I get a smaller part next time. She also started a lot of rumors about me to make up for my lack of growth in the company. This place also really shirked child labor laws. It made us like scrub bathrooms with harsh chemicals and stuff after every rehearsal. I didn't mind any of that. I didn't mind the weird treatment from the lady who ran it or the diva kids. I mean, I did, but I put up with it because I had a crush. My first real person crush since Rainbow World. I'd only liked celebrities, really, before this guy. I found boys cute, but I only focused on, like, Greg Brady and Davy Jones from their reruns on Nick at Night. But he was a celebrity within the company, so I guess I just have a type. I learned early on that I am attracted to talent, which is a bad idea. Right now we're going to call him Brody. This wasn't his actual name, but you all got an immediate image in your head of what a Brody is the minute I said that, and that's what this man looked like. Anyway, Brody was always the lead in basically every show. He was the shining star of the company. He'd also really let it get to his head. He was years older than me, so when I joined at 11, he was 15. He was homeschooled at the time, and as soon as he hit 16, the legal age to drop out, he dropped out. How does one drop out of homeschool? Nobody's really sure. Do you go hang out at school? Who knows? He was offered full scholarships anyway and a bunch of other opportunities, but he refused because he was too talented for help. I don't know. Not really sure. I would have killed for any of the opportunities he was just handed on a plate. And I was obsessed with Brody for years, and I knew he knew, and I didn't care because he took pity on me. He'd let me hang out with him, and we'd occasionally listen to burnt CDs in his room. Door always open, his mom always on the couch looking directly in the room. And I really grew to treasure those moments because I thought that if I was cool enough to hang out with, maybe someday when I was a lot older, I'd be cool enough to date. But even I knew that the age difference was creepy, so I was like not gonna do anything. He didn't know the age difference was creepy. Okay, we're about to get really dark here. Some triggering stuff might come up for y'all. In a stage performance, I'd let y'all know that it's totally cool to just like put in some earbuds or peace out for a minute and I would come get you when it's over. But the virtual world has given us a much better solution in that you can just mute whatever device you are listening in on. When I'm done with these scary bits, I'm going to throw up this banner and then wave my arms a lot. Okay? I will give y'all a minute to mute here. Okay. So my crush on Brody was a few years deep at this point. I was 13, somewhere between the 7th and 8th grade. On weekends, I was going to Pittsburgh to be in a Renaissance festival and getting paid for it. Not enough to make up for gas or costumes, and we were still super poor, but it was my first paying job as an actor. And I was getting to hang out with my crush in between, and I hadn't bored him away yet, so life was great. And then one day he kissed me. It was weird. I didn't know what to do for many reasons. It was my first kiss with my crush, who was 17 years old and who knew I was 13. He had a bit of a reputation of dating everyone in the company. I guess he thought it was my turn. I didn't want it to be my turn, but again, I didn't know what to do. Didn't really think I could tell people because they all knew I had a crush on him. So what be the problem anyway? Like, clearly, this worked out for me, right? I didn't want to offend him. And anyway, he knew how young I was, so there was only so far he'd take it, right? August 17th, 2005. A goddamn Wednesday. My longest real person crush holding me down on his bed. I had my period, and I hoped that my massive bloody pad would deter him. Nope. So there I am, all clothes still on, boots, my jeans and underwear around my ankles with this massive bloody pad just out in the open. I was wearing a green turtleneck sweater, this like olive green color. And it was too hot for the weather outside, but I always favored style over function anyway. Now I was going back and forth between sweltering and grateful that it was too bulky to see my shape through, and even more grateful that he wasn't trying to take that off too. Door open, his mom on the couch. Pretending to watch TV this time, although several times we did make eye contact. Time is moving fast and slow all at once. I didn't scream because I didn't know that I had that option. I figured I must have led him on, led him to believe that I wanted this, that me having a crush on him and existing in his room with him clearly conveyed to him that this was something that I wanted. So I stopped crying and tried to, as they say, lay back and enjoy it. But in that moment, pretending to purposefully be having sex for the first time, I realized how terribly bad he was at this and how he smelled so fucking awful. I could not get it out of my head. He was like, at that moment, just a bunch of like really, really gross smelling marijuana and teenage BO and like a cloud around him like Pigpen from fucking Charlie Brown. So I decided to go back to Panic. At least I could focus on that instead of how incredibly bored and full of shame I was. I have no idea how long Brody lasted. I just know that I left his apartment afterwards to wait for my mom outside, which I never did before. I usually wanted to spend every lasting second with Brody, and now I wanted him as far away from me as possible. But he followed me outside, also a deviation from the norm. Usually I'd be following him everywhere. But he wanted to tell me how happy he was that he finally had sex. He'd had sex before. And that no one would ever believe him. They believed him. Okay, the scary parts are over. The big scary parts are over. It's going to be lightly referenced after this, but the scary parts are over. It's fine. Also, feel free to remute me at any point if you need to. It's totally fine. I will not be upset. When a boy is spreading a rumor about you, no matter how untrue it is, people will always believe him anyway, no matter what. In this case, it was very easy for people to believe. I, a girl who had been trailing after him for years, willingly took his virginity. Again, he had sex before, so I don't even know. I already had the horror rumors swirling around me, and now everyone had proof, so that was cute for them. A few friends were really mad at me when they found out. They thought I had been keeping some sort of like sexy secret from them, not that I was processing a ton of trauma. The shoulder movement still works because even though I was processing a ton of trauma, I'm still very cute, so it's fine. One friend was really mad at me because she also had a crush on him. We both openly acknowledged our crushes on him because we both knew we were too young for him. But to her, this seemed like a betrayal, that I snuck in and took him away from her. And I didn't have the language at the time to explain that, haha, no, he was very much all hers if she wanted him, because I never wanted to be alone with him again. Side note, I found out later, like years later, the minute that he turned 18, the lady who ran the children's company, who hated me, started sleeping with him. Her distaste for me makes a lot more sense now. The entirety of my last year in middle school was very weird for me. I was understandably traumatized regarding real person crushes. I still feel really bad about this one because there was a boy who I really liked who was in my science class. There was an inkling for me that he liked me, but I didn't really know if he did, and I didn't want to find out because, I don't know, either he'd hurt me too or he'd be disgusted with me. If you're watching, please know that I've lightly begun to process what happened to me, and I regret not telling you that I thought you were very cute and how I liked how green your eyes were. But clearly I was going through some shit, so well, sorry. High school wolf. I was fresh meat for the boys in high school, a lot of which didn't go to middle school with me, and didn't know about the rumors that followed me. So I actually, finally, dated boys who knew nothing about me. I had a lot of issues picking the right ones. I also had some major separation anxiety, so I would just let them cheat on me all over the place, or worse somehow, try to convince me that they legitimately had ice powers. That boy is a whole different show in himself, and we dated for 2 years. I became such a people pleaser in an attempt to get people to like me for even just a little bit that I became the girl who carries an entire group project, who does all the work, who doesn't complain when I don't get to ask for help, or when I do ask for help and it falls back on me because we still get an A because I'm good at stuff. When I still have trouble working through. Look, normally I always try and make new memories out of something bad. I call it exercising the demons. Like, if a mean girl borrows a dress of mine for a show, instead of hiding it away forever because it makes me choke up, I'd stick 3 more ingenues in it so she wouldn't have to be the first thing that came to my mind every time I'd see it. Or if someone breaks up with me in front of a restaurant, guess what? The next 5 meals I have out with friends are gonna be in that restaurant. I don't want my life to be haunted with things I can't use, places I can't go, all because of people. People have always let me down. How do you do that with your own body? You can't. I developed a lot of body dysmorphia that I still struggle with. In high school, at my lightest, I was 120 pounds. For reference, I'm currently 150, and I am happy to provide proof that I'm still very cute, but guess what? It's still on my mind all the time. I'm still very vain, no matter what. I'm still the same romance-filled little girl who will write a poem about a boy biting my nose to get a laugh because it's funny and it's true, but when I objectively look at myself in photos, I can pretend that that's not me, and I can much more easily see what I look like. Spoiler, I look hot. But every time I look at myself in a mirror or a reflection, or unfortunately in this digital age, some sort of on-screen video, I still to this day get this nagging feeling that it's not ever going to be good enough. No matter what I look like, it's not enough, and I'm clearly not smart enough or talented enough to make up for that. So this has got to be better and better. Because a decision about my body was made without my input. And as someone who loves a schedule and explicitly clear instructions, I very much do not appreciate decisions about me being made without my input. This is mostly why I have so many photos of myself, not just on my Instagram, but like straight up ordered from Walgreens, printed out, sent to my home, physical photos of myself anywhere. It's the only real way that I know what I look like. It's the only way I can see what I am. I understand conceptually that none of this was my fault. I'm not asking for a bunch of comments saying it wasn't your fault, it's not you, blah, blah. Like, I've heard that, and great, but I logically get that. that a crying 13-year-old girl wasn't a clear sign of consent, that a grown woman's obsession with a boy I once had a crush on isn't my fault, and that didn't mean I was a bad person for existing, that my body type doesn't mean I'm doing anything with it, and even if I am, fuck you. But I'm not done healing, and I'm not sure I ever will be. I mean, I hope so, but everything before August 17th of 2005 feels like the beginning of the week. Not great. I mean, who even likes Mondays? Fuck Mondays, but it's chucking along. And yes, things are all right in my adult life, as good as they can be, all things considered. They're like 70% good. I even managed to ultra schedule myself into a weekly show. Promise I'm not going to be obnoxious and plug it or anything, but just in case. If anyone wants these, guess what? Don't get them because they're very, very hard to clean. And they also don't stay up. I don't know. I just feel like it's a forever hump day. A perpetual Wednesday. Stuck in the middle of the week that isn't going great anyway. And I would love to look forward to the weekend, but it's hard when it doesn't seem to be anywhere in sight. Because every day I wake up, it's another Wednesday. At this point, I'll even settle for Thursday. I'll let you know if I make it there.
In her bathing. Looking fine all the time. In her bathing suit. Looking fine all the time.